CDC found that the most common waterborne diseases came not from poorly treated surface water, but from cross connections and inadequately treated groundwater.
If a utility wants to take a look at their ordinances or tariffs or whatever their legal foundation is found in, what are some practical first steps they should take?
I would Google TCEQ backflow ordinance and see what popped up.
What's one thing that every utility should do this year to strengthen their legal foundation?
I would say look at your service agreement. The service agreement is kind of where the rubber meets the road from a customer's perspective. If you have a strong, clear service agreement that every customer, be they residents or business owners, that you give to those new folks, they're going to have that in their hand.
Welcome to FLO Talk, Conversations with Water Professionals. I'm Travis Cavall, the Cross Connection Control Field Supervisor with Hardin and Associates Consulting, and the Partnership Development Lead for FLO by HAC. In our trailer episode, we introduced the 6 pillars of cross connection control, a framework designed to help utilities evaluate and strengthen their programs. Today, we're kicking off the first pillar, legal foundation. A strong cross-connection control program starts with authority. Before a utility can require inspections or enforcing testing requirements or addressing compliance issues, it needs the legal framework to support those actions. To help us discuss this topic, I'm joined by Dr. Alicia Diehl. Alicia earned her PhD in chemical engineering from the University of Texas at Austin and spent more than 20 years with the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, helping public water systems with drinking water treatment and distribution. She's also a licensed professional engineer in Texas and has extensive experience in water quality, regulatory compliance, and public health protection. Alicia, thank you for joining us today. Before we get too far into the weeds, tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into water.
Well, first of all, I need to clarify one thing. My chemical engineering degree was a bachelor's from the University of Wisconsin,
Okay.
where I started out. But when I came down to Texas, I went to the University of Texas and got my master's and PhD, primarily in the formation of disinfection byproducts with different kinds of disinfectants. And so I started out in 91 really looking inside surface water treatment plants, which of course was fascinating. But after I came to TCEQ and started looking at other facets of drinking water, I learned that with the strengthening of the surface water treatment rules, CDC found that the most common waterborne diseases came not from poorly treated surface water, but from cross connections and inadequately treated groundwater. So cross connection control kind of immediately sparked my interest. And I had the opportunity after Joel Klump restarted the quarterly cross connection meetings to sit in on those and help with some regulatory guidance and just kind of help with present and learn so much from that group of industry experts.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I'm learning that I've got some great folks around me when it comes to those that cross connection control subcommittee, which has been a huge benefit to me in my career, right? A place to go and learn. And so definitely excited to get to talk to you guys that were there at the beginning of that. So I do want to talk about, in Texas, we've got 7,000 water systems, right? And they're all different shapes and sizes and all different types of systems and different authorities. What are some of those systems and some of the methods that they would use to establish their legal foundation?
So obviously, and this is why this is kind of the first pillar, if you don't have and take that legal authority, you can run into problems at your water system not having enough responsibility, power, authority to correct situations that could be a risk to public health. So we talk about three kinds of systems. Communities, okay, that's kind of obvious. Non-transient non-communities, which is where people are there more than 6 months, and so they're drinking that water a lot. And then transient non-communities, where somebody may come in, stay a few days, and then take off. Like, think about a RV park, or a gas station, or a Texas Department of Transportation rest area. So primarily, we tend to deal with the communities kind of first of all. And for communities, we're thinking about some really specific ways for protecting public health by having authority. And the first one I want to mention is the ordinance. Over 5,000, every city or community has to have a plumbing ordinance. But we go a little bit farther with backflow. A plumbing ordinance, that has strength of making sure that people who build new houses put in the backflow preventions that are mentioned in a plumbing code. But we need the city to have a little bit more teeth when it comes to enforcing that. And so there's specific items in an ordinance, and these are all laid out. Examples are given in the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality rule language to let your customer service inspector enter a house and make sure that things are up to par, right? And so those two kind of things, the plumbing code and then the plumbing ordinance, are what we talk about the most when we talk about a community. But I know we want to talk about a third thing on all of these, including your communities, and that is your retail customer service agreement.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we do when we go talk to water purveyors, a lot of times our first question is, what plumbing code are you under, right? What's your newest adopted plumbing code? And then when was the last time your ordinance or your tariff or your customer service agreement was updated, right? And are those things matching, or are they in conflict with each other? And so, very important that these communities are able to have continuity in their legal foundation, and also just have the legal foundation to do the testing or enforcement or anything that they need to do to ensure that cross-connection control, not just compliance, but everyday water quality, right? So in your experience, what are the most common issues or outdated provisions utilities discover when they review their ordinances or tariffs or customer service agreements?
It seems a little silly being that we're talking in 2026, but one thing that cross-connection control covers is control of lead fittings. And surprisingly, and I guess not so surprisingly, it's like a city or town doesn't want to be changing their ordinances willy-nilly every 6 months or anything. But we still see the pre-2014 language in there related to lead. And since, look it up on the web, Flint, Michigan, and we've all kind of come to really realize and understand that no level of lead is safe. So that's something that I'd always recommend that communities or anyone in the service agreement as well, check that out. Just having put in the ordinance, if that was put in a long time ago, it may not have matched all of the requirements that are part of the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality recommendations. And so just doing an overview of that anytime that, for instance, when you get a new city manager, or if things change in the community, if you annex another area, when things are changing, double check all your documentation to make sure you're up to speed.
Yeah. And You were talking about the idea that these water purveyors and municipalities and MUDs and SUDs and all these, they don't always want to update those ordinances and tariffs. They're not quick to do those things because they're difficult to do, right? And so they don't want to update these things. But something that we find quite a bit as inspectors, right, is we'll go into a community and the building official or the water purveyor will have very specific ideas for cross-connection control that maybe don't line up exactly with plumbing code, or maybe they're going above and beyond plumbing code or going above and beyond state regulation. But if they don't have updated ordinances or tariffs, they can not have the legal backing to enforce those things. And so that's one thing that we find quite often is that we're being, or that communities may be enforcing in action rules that they don't have legal standing for. And what's some of the dangers that folks can run into there?
Oh my gosh. I mean, if, there have been some big cities that just haven't had the opportunity, or there's been pushback on putting that cross-connection language beyond the plumbing code into their ordinances. And, one of those is right of entry. We could see a community get into a little conflict just because one of their code enforcement people who has the credentials to do a customer service inspection, just, trying to enter a place or entering a place and then getting that pushback from the owner or residents of that facility because it's not in the ordinance, which, I have to say, as hard as it is to put an ordinance in place, it's kind of a lot harder to get into a legal discussion with a resident or owner of a business.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So if a utility wants to take a look at their ordinances or tariffs or whatever their legal foundation is found in, what are some practical first steps they should take?
Oh my gosh. I guess the first thing that, if it was me, I would Google TCEQ backflow ordinance and see what popped up, because there's a lot of guidance on the web and in the actual rules. I might, talk to the TCEQ's current backflow and cross-connection lead implementer, and I'm going to throw her right under the bus, and that's Catherine McLaughlin. And you can reach her at, write this down, 512-239-4691.
That is right under the bus, yeah.
But that's where you're going to get the straight poop, so to speak. And if you have any questions about that rule language, that's TCEQ is kind of the arbiter of that information.
Yeah, and Catherine is awesome and a great source of information. Somebody that I've reached out to personally a number of times, and very accessible. So I'm sure she'll appreciate. I'm sure she'll appreciate that. But the other thing is, I know that when I started my program forever ago now, right? I probably went 4 years in before I discovered there was a rules guidelines for establishing and maintaining a cross-connection control program. Absolutely, the TCEQ is a wonderful resource. If you look up that cross-connection control subcommittee, they've got all those rules guidelines, all the relevant rules guidelines right there for you. And it really can help you as you design and build your program and come up with that legal foundation and send you on the right path. So what's one thing that every utility should do this year to strengthen their legal foundation?
Wow. I think I would say look at your service agreement. We talked about the need to have a plumbing code for a community. And that includes, as you mentioned, thank you, districts and as well as municipalities. We talked about the actual cross-connection ordinance language that supports that. But the service agreement is kind of where the rubber meets the road from a customer's perspective. If you have a strong clear service agreement that every customer, be they residents or business owners, that you give to those new folks, they're going to have that in their hand. And if you've got that, meeting the regulations, when they sign that, they've signed kind of a mini contract that makes it clear to them individually what their responsibilities are. People ask things like, oh, is the city going to pay for my backflow protection testing? And guess what? Maybe not. So having that in their hand where they sign it, I think that document, first of all, it's kind of easy to review. It's easier to change than an ordinance if it is wrong. And it's just a really important piece of paper to have signed by both parties.
Yeah, absolutely. And great. There are great example service agreements out there in those rules guidelines and in those same resources. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel necessarily on your customer service agreement. And finally, I think we talked a little bit before about those non-transient communities. I lost the word for it, but when we talk about places like RV parks or places where people are living but are kind of owned by a single owner, how do those folks handle their cross-connection control regulation?
It's kind of the hardest and the easiest for them. It's the hardest because you're not required to be a licensed operator to own and operate. For example, let's use the RV park as a common example. And so, if you're in a community, you may have had all that basic training that at least opened the door to cross-connection control, even if you don't have the specific licenses. So that RV park owner is kind of at a disadvantage from a training perspective. However, they're at the advantage because ownership is complete authority. So what I'd recommend for any RV park owner, rural business owner, somebody operating a camp, for example, like a kids' camp in the summer, which isn't a community, but you really want to protect those kids. Go ahead, search around for some of those regulatory guidances that you mentioned, which can be very helpful. Call Texas Commission on Environmental Quality and ask for some free help, or just look around your community. You'll find in that community that there are backflow prevention and assembly testers and customer service inspectors who will be really glad to talk to you about what your needs are and whether they can help you. So kind of just start poking around for that. The last thing that you want to do as an owner is wind up in a situation where somebody that works for you or a camper or somebody who's staying there gets ill from a cross connection. And now again, you didn't have the protection in place to begin with. And now you're in this discussion that can be really uncomfortable.
So Alicia, in Texas, is adopting a plumbing code enough to support your cross-connection control program?
My gosh, that's a great question, Travis. Folks, especially when they're good at plumbing, they tend to think, oh, that plumbing code is going to be enough, right? And a plumbing code is a very strong piece of guidance for builders and people creating homes or businesses. However, in Texas, we go one step further. We need to have a community, a district, a municipality have additional language that's in the ordinance specifically that allows that community to have authority over specific items. Like the plumbing code is not going to tell you what the fee is when a person does something wrong, right? The plumbing code is not going to tell you what that city's procedure is for getting backflow prevention assemblies tested and who pays for that item. So you need to have that local knowledge put in there in an ordinance, not just a code.
Yeah. Well, Alicia, thank you so much for joining us today. This is FLO Talk, and I know that people learned a lot today. I would encourage everybody, go follow us on socials, Hardin and Associates and FLO by HAC, and come see us in August at the TCEQ Public Drinking Water Conference. We're excited to see everybody there. But Alicia, once again, thank you. You've been wonderful.
Thank you, Travis. It's always great to talk with you.